Hello everybody and welcome back to CW Live. Over recent weeks we've been reviewing the content, reviewing your comments and thinking about how we can diversify the shows. We want to ensure that the issues you're raising are being covered. That's why today we have a special episode for our Parcel Force members, and we're delighted to be joined by National Officer Davie Robertson. Welcome, Davie.
Thanks, Chris.
Good to have you with us. In the future shows, we'll be planning to cover the USO, Royal Mail's takeover bid, latest finish times in Scotland, the growing threat of AI, site closures in BT, and much more. But today is about our Parcel Force members. You've sent in some excellent questions, which we're going to be putting to Davie in the next half hour or so. But first up, we thought, Davie, it'd be a great opportunity for you to set the scene, give an update of where we are with any negotiations that have been going on in Parcel Force, how you feel it is, and sort of an overarching opening statement from yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I won't take up too much time because I think it's important we do address the issues that people have put in. And I know, reading some of the stuff online, I know there can be frustration at times, from what they perceive as a lack of feedback. I mean, I can assure everybody we work constantly on Parcel Force. And I think the first thing to sort of think about is to reflect on where we were, in the run-up to the Business Transformation Agreement. Whereas Royal Mail Group were very much of the view that Parcel Force was not in a good place, and what we faced at the start of those talks was really a position from Royal Mail of shrink it or close it, and if we retain it, almost a move to a 100% owner-driver model. So the one of the great sort of boons in the Business Transformation Agreement was actually the turnaround in Parcel Force, where we did stop that train of events. We did buy an opportunity to try and turn Parcel Force round, and we've been working on that ever since. Now, during that time, Parcel Force members will be aware they've also had a change in management. The Aaron Barnes regime came to an end, and Rob Fowler is now the managing director. That changeover, that change from Aaron to Rob, in some ways I view as a benefit. I don't think the company was moving in the right direction under Aaron. Time will tell with Rob, but would give him the benefit of the doubt at this stage. But what he's had is a period of time to reflect on the business, the sort of programme of work that we'd agreed with Aaron, and to review some of those elements. And we're now in discussions with Rob on what comes next, and there will be changes, and I'm sure we'll cover some of them this afternoon. But Parcel Force financially is not in a great place, nor is Royal Mail. No. But all the losses in Royal Mail, or all the losses in Royal Mail Group, Parcel Force does contribute to them. So there is a challenge ahead of us, but I'm still confident we can return Parcel Force to profitability and secure the jobs, excellent jobs, and the terms and conditions of our members going forward.
Thanks, Dave. Really, really interesting. I've got some questions, as you know, from our members in Parcel Force. So quite a few members asking the same, actually. So I wanted to try and group them together, including Chris Curran and Daryl Morrell, who have both been talking about, the union has talked about, Royal Mail has talked about the potential of Parcel Force and Royal Mail at some point coming together. Your view on that? Have any negotiations taken place? Any suggestions from the company?
Well, I don't think it was as clean cut as a total reintegration. So I mean, back in the days, I worked in Royal Mail, then was transferred into Parcel Force when it was separated, and then because I was a heavy goods driver, I transferred back into Royal Mail. So what we were talking about, and it is part of the agreement, is the Section 5 of the BRT&G was the single large parcel network. And some of what we've been doing, and I have seen some of the comments on various aspects of it, is around looking at the optimum way of Royal Mail Group dealing with large parcels. Parcel Force deals with larger items than Royal Mail in the main, and it also deals at a different price point than Royal Mail. Parcel Force charges more than Royal Mail for a next day parcel. So the agreement does task us to find a way of moving more to a single large parcel network, or looking for economies of scale, or where we avoid going up the same country path 3 or 4 times a day. So there has been some movement on that, but it's been slow, and it would be fair to say Royal Mail have been slow to update their technology. We've got a bizarre situation just now, Chris, where Royal Mail PDAs can read Parcelforce barcodes, but Parcelforce PDAs can't read Royal Mail barcodes. Now that's now in the process of being remedied, and I think we're now in a position to start moving that on more seriously. But it does take investment from Royal Mail. Some of the things covered by the agreement were moving to a single suite of products so that we're not competing, so that Royal Mail, a Track 24 isn't in direct competition with a PF24. So differentiating the products, giving them a different specification, making sure that there's no internal competition, there's enough competition out there without Royal Mail and Parcelforce competing against each other. So that's almost everything that we're doing just now is in that kind of area. Some of it's been very slow. Some of what we've tried hasn't worked first time out, or not as well as we hoped. And I know there was some questions on like the rural activity that we'll talk about, some of the collection activity. But the reality is, if we're going to make Parcelforce as successful as it can be, we have to stop doing things that don't add value, and we have to do more of the things that work very well. And that might mean some workload moving from Parcelforce to Royal Mail, and that has happened. But what we've missed so far is the reciprocal large parcel work coming back from Royal Mail, and I think we're now in a position to do that. And the discussions in the last couple of weeks with Rob have been in that area, so I'm more confident around that now. What we'll see at an end state will be somewhere, it'll be different to what we have just now, but it'll be somewhere between where we are now and integration. I don't think it'll be full integration, not in the short term anyway, and I don't think that would necessarily work for Royal Mail or Parcelforce. But there's an awful lot of very large items in Royal Mail that would sit better in Parcelforce, and there's some of the smaller items in Parcelforce would possibly sit better in Royal Mail. How you make that work and how you get a network across both businesses that doesn't duplicate cost, doesn't duplicate effort, is the trick. The business has been very slow to get to a position where we could seriously have those discussions, and they won't just be with me, they'll be with Mark, and because they obviously affect delivery as well. But we're now, I think, in a position to start moving that on with more sort of pace, which is a benefit, because certainly, and we'll talk about it today, there's aspects in Parcelforce that we need to concentrate on, and that might mean some elements we have to look at what the synergies are with Royal Mail. It's also true for Royal Mail. There's elements of Royal Mail work that would be more cost effective if they sat in Parcelforce. So it's getting that balance right. That is the key. That is the key going forward, is getting the balance right. Parcelforce, we operate in quite a niche area of the market. Back in 2000 when we did Apollo, Parcelforce was the Parcelforce arm of Royal Mail. It's not now. Parcelforce is a 75 million item a year business that sits within Royal Mail, which is a 1.7 billion item a year business. So it's quite a specialist area, and we have to concentrate on what makes that work, because we're up against, in Parcelforce terms, we're up against companies like DPD, who are a 260 million item a year company, who operate from more depots than us, and that gives them and they operate a totally different employment model, which gives a gig economy model, which gives them commercial benefits that we have to ensure that we can overcome in other ways. So all of our efforts are in that area, Chris, but I don't think it will be as simple as just saying, let's fold Parcelforce back into Royal Mail, and I don't even think that would be the right thing to do.
Carl Rowe, one of our members, he was asking some similar questions as well, but you touched there, and I'll pull up, I think the comments on the screen now from Carl, we can see. So he is asking, like, when are we going to see investment in Parcelforce? Obviously, you touched on that just then. I mean, stuff like electric vehicles, but there was a feeling shared by Carl and quite a few Parcelforce members of, like, we're feeling a little bit left behind here, and we're wondering whether this is a tactical thing from Parcel Force or Royal Mail Group. What would your take on that be?
I don't. The vehicle thing, I absolutely get, and listen, the state of the fleet in Parcel Force and across Royal Mail is frankly deplorable. Royal Mail Group made a decision 4 or 5 years ago, I think, to move to a 10-year vehicle renewal programme, which is frankly ludicrous. I mean, when I was a heavy goods driver in Royal Mail and in Parcel Force, we used to replace Arctics after 300,000 miles. They're now going round the clock. They're now doing 1,000,000 miles plus. So the state of the fleet is a concern. It's not just a concern in Parcel Force, though. The Royal Mail fleet is in certain cases getting as poor as the Parcel Force fleet. Investment, yeah, we are desperate for it. We would absolutely love to have some new vehicles. We would love to have upgraded facilities in the depots. We would love to have a lot of things that would make life a lot easier. I suppose the difficulty, and we never stop asking for these things, I suppose the difficulty is in companies that are materially loss-making, the cash for investment is a difficulty. So I believe there is some scope for new vans, but that's not going to replace the hundreds, if not thousands, of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old vehicles that we've got. Replacing them is going to be a slow process. But look, we are always on the case of the company to upgrade the facilities and the environment that our members work in. We want them to have the best of kit. But unfortunately, in the current climate, that's going to be a slow process. And that's true for Royal Mail. I know it's easy for Parcel Force members to think they're the poor relatives. I don't think there's any more investment in fleet in Royal Mail than there is in Parcel Force, and even the electric drive in Royal Mail. I mean, I think we're actually selling them, but Royal Mail are selling them back to the company we got them from. Electric is in Parcel Force. I don't think electric is necessarily the most viable option. Because of the distances we travel in Parcel Force. You think of Royal Mail, 1,250 delivery offices given national coverage. Parcel Force, we do it from 54 depots, so stem mileages, inter-drop mileages are far higher. So I'm not sure that electric is necessarily the way to go in Parcel Force, but we certainly need some updated kit.
Thanks. You talked about, Davie, the possibility of there's some work that potentially sits in Royal Mail that would be better off in Parcel Force and vice versa, and those negotiations are going on. Ian Rando, one of our members, I think we can see the comment on screen now. He's saying our Parcel Force sortation machine is going to be processing Royal Mail parcels in the near future. So he's coming at it, I guess, from the other angle of saying, like, I think, he made the point in a subsequent comment, we feel they've got the ability to do that.
Well, I think that's an interesting question. So, do Royal Mail need the capacity of the Parcel Force sort centres? The answer to that is very simple: no. They haven't filled the two national hubs, new hubs they've got, the Northwest Hub and the Midland Super Hub. So they're not running at capacity. So do Royal Mail need the Parcel Force sortation capacity at this stage? No, they don't. Do Parcel Force have sortation capacity? Yes, they do, because unfortunately, Parcel Force 2-3 years ago was 100 million item a year network. Now we have declined. We are now sitting, or we were sitting about 75. It started to grow slightly, which is a real positive, but we're still running well under capacity. The only reason to put Royal Mail traffic through Parcel Force's MEC, though, if we're talking about the Coventry Hub, if we're talking about Chorley or Hatfield, as if those items are going into the Parcel Force network for delivery. And that's possible. I would like to see some of the largest items in Royal Mail, the ones that are unwieldy, moving into Parcel Force if they're in areas where Parcel Force can deliver them. So I think there is a scope for, and it's one of the things we've agreed as the next piece of work in Parcel Force with Rob Fowler, is the transfer of volume between the networks. It was part of the BRT&G. I'm sure I know that Parcel Force members have pointed out that they've seen Parcel Force work going to Royal Mail, but not a lot coming back. the next phase is to look at what can come from Royal Mail. It's difficult for Royal Mail to handle because of the size of the vehicles, etc. What can we move into Parcel Force? The easiest way to do that would be to source that upstream. So effectively, either get it direct from the customer and move it into the Parcel Force network, or to, for instance, the Midland hubs. Not, it's only a few miles away from the Coventry hubs, or to move unmachinable traffic from the Midland hub to Coventry. In that case, it would go through the Parcel Force MEC, but it would only do it if it was going into Parcel Force for delivery. Parcel Force are not going to process volume for Royal Mail delivery. It would add huge complexity to the pipeline, and it makes no sense.
That makes sense. What you said makes sense. Sorry, on the new management in Parcel Force, that's come up a few times in the comments. So you rightly said it's early days. Of course it is. But I mean, in your role, are you sensing like a more of a willingness to look at these issues that are being raised by yourself and our representatives across the country?
I think there is. Time will tell. You know, we've had a few meetings with Rob now. They've been fairly positive, I have to say. Notwithstanding, Rob or any managing director of Parcel Force still has to answer to a Royal Mail board. Yeah. So he's not completely master of his own destiny. I think we will judge Rob as time goes on, but certainly there's some good beginnings. I think the real issue is, I'm not here to knock individuals, but I think under Aaron's tenure, Aaron, in my personal opinion, didn't have any empathy with his employees or members, and actually the sort of narrative that the company took during the dispute, we were in a dispute, but the narrative the company took was really the company's doomed unless we move to 100% owner drivers. We're finished, none of which was true. But it certainly absolutely destroyed morale in Parcel Force, because effectively their managing director was saying to them, the company's in pretty poor state and it's your fault. Actually, what we need is more owner drivers. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that they were serious about that. I mean, during the talks, when we were there, probably this time last year or just before, sort of February, March last year, we believe the company was within a day of actually offering conversion packages to our members. So had we not sort of persevered and actually negotiated a good outcome for Parcel Force in that set of discussions, the reality is, for our members, if they were still working in Parcel Force at this point, they would probably have been an owner driver. So Aaron's tenure was not good for the company. I don't think he ever really fully understood our members and what they can do. So I think it is a breath of fresh air. I think it is another opportunity. But the challenges are still going to be there, Chris. We have to, this is not, I mean, I worked in Parcel Force when it lost. I'm loath to say how much it's losing just now, because I know this goes on YouTube and whatever. Yeah. But I worked in Parcel Force when it lost nearly £200 million a year. But that was in the days when it was part of a Royal Mail that made hundreds of millions of pounds a year and was publicly owned. We're now, Royal Mail Group's a privately owned company. So we are with a board, and who knows what that board will look like in the future. But with a board who are really interested in, the bottom line. So we have to continually push to return Parcel Force to a more commercially viable position. And that's difficult, because nobody likes change, but the status quo is not an option for us in Parcel Force. We must continue to drive forward, and that does mean change, but we've got to control the change.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most emotive issues across Royal Mail Group in the last sort of year or so, following the agreement that we made, is later finishes, and obviously Parcel Force are not sort of outside of that. Mark Johnson, I think we can see Mark's comment on screen now, is asking when are the later starts coming in Parcel Force, and quite a few other colleagues. So I mean, it's probably worth an update on you. And also we've got, I think you touched on it just now, the general question around revisions and changes in Parcelforce. There were a couple of members on rural routes, for example, were saying, like, are we even going to have a route? Is that work going to go into Royal Mail? So maybe sort of a rounded answer there, if possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully it's not a request on later start times.
No, I don't think it was.
I don't think there's a. Don't get me wrong, and you're probably aware of this. I mean, there have been times where the business have spoken to us about deferring the network. I was never keen on that, because Parcel Force, unlike Royal Mail, as it stands just now, and I'll cover this a bit in a second, but as it stands just now, Parcel Force drivers go out, deliver and collect. We don't, just now, we don't have a huge differentiation between the delivery workforce and the collection workforce. So you go out in the morning, you deliver, and you also collect, and you have to have those collections back by a certain time to dispatch into the network. Which means if you squash the front of the day back, you can't move the back of the day back, so actually it starts to then compress. We're heading into Royal Mail territory here, we're compressing the delivery window, etc. So I don't think it was ever in our best interests. In honesty, probably because of the drop in volume, the company's kind of at this stage lost interest in it in Parcel Force. So I'm not anticipating a wholesale change in or proposals for changes to start times in Parcel Force at this time. What we are looking at though is, and this will cover off the rurals, you know, listen, that is emotive, and you know we covered off, there were some motions at conference on it which we answered, and actually we've paused the rurals because frankly it wasn't working. The rurals was part of the single large parcel network. It does make sense, and this is one of the, you know, and it brings the comment from, you know, our members, will we have a rural route? We're not in the business of moving, you know, getting rid of routes or moving work for the sake of moving it. The truth is, in Parcel Force, as I said earlier, we operate out of 54 depots and cover the whole country. It's interesting, the first place we trialled this was in the Leeds area, and actually 3 rural routes out of Leeds depot were covering a geography that in square mileage was the same as Greater London. It's huge areas of the country covered with very few drops in them. So they're rural, it's small villages, it's farms, it's whatever. Now, I'm sure if I was doing one of these routes, you know, especially if it's a day like we're having in London today, it's a nice, you know, it's a nice day's work. But unfortunately, it's difficult to make for Parcel Force to make those routes profitable, because you do more driving than you do delivering. So it's not a case of saying we don't want to deliver in rural areas, we do. But equally, if Royal Mail are covering the same ground, and there's 3 things here, and this is the problem, and we can get the mail to them in time to meet their services. 2, that they can take all of the Parcel Force volume for that area, and 3, they can hit the quality of service that Parcel Force require, which is higher than Royal Mail's. You know, Parcel Force really need 98.5% first, you know, quality service on a next day item, whereas Royal Mail are probably gunning for about 95. So if those three things can happen, and we can then move some of that rural work into Royal Mail, then there's a big cost benefit to Parcel Force. There's an efficiency benefit in Royal Mail if it gives them more volume that they can handle, and as long as quality of service is maintained, there's a benefit to both businesses. What's happened though, of course, is you know, and I think we've seen some of that in the comments, I think it'd be true to say it's been something of a culture shock to a lot of Royal Mail delivery people, and I understand that. You know, it's as I said at conference, there is a difference between, you know, delivering a pair of trainers and some of the items Parcel Force deliver, and you know, it's difficult to fit a canoe in a York. So it's there's some logistical problems there. Equally, you know, probably the time we launched it, we all know the quality of service in Royal Mail was not great, and that's a whole another debate about why that happened. So it hasn't really worked, so we've paused it. And in actual, in some of the depots where we've launched it, we are going to take it back out and rethink it. the concept's right, the delivery was wrong, so it hasn't worked. But it's not about saying we don't want to deliver in those areas. It's about getting the optimum delivery in those areas, because really it's about what's commercially best for Parcel Force in this case. The one thing to remember though, is that in all of that activity, as with all the activity in the BRT&G, where there was a downturn in work in Parcel Force, or a headcount reduction in Parcel Force, all of that was through agency, courier or owner drivers. I know that might not please everybody, but none of our members have been made redundant every day. So somebody may have lost their rural route, but they've been given another route. You know, nobody's lost their job or lost their ability to have a job in Parcel Force as a result of that activity. So that's paused just now, although we will relook at it to see if we can get it to work, but it's not going to work everywhere. And the other thing we really need to do in Parcel Force is to start maximising the delivery only routes, which is something that Rob Fowler's keen on as well, because that really then starts to get us up to the levels of productivity that help us in this argument about, do we match up against an owner driver? We've always argued that owner drivers don't do the same as we do. We've never been able to get Parcel Force to make the owner drivers do what we do. So we're now looking at, well, why don't we do what the owner drivers do? And that is just deliver and then separate the collections out, either in Parcel Force or again looking at synergies with Royal Mail. And I know I know we've seen the same comments in Royal Mail about the items are too big or whatever. But it's really about getting the best, the optimum network for Parcel Force that protects our members' jobs. And in all of this, nobody loses their job. All of the headcount reduction is through the external resource. So I still think some of it hasn't worked as well as we would have liked, and we accepted the motion at conference to review it, and we are reviewing it. But I still think some of these things are the key to success. We have to get Parcel Force back on a forward trajectory, and all of these things in part, none of them are a silver bullet, but all of them together start to provide an answer.
Thanks, Davie. One of the things you talked about just now is, the uncertainty surrounding the company. With obviously, is there going to be another takeover bid, or isn't there? All those things which are sort of floating around in the background. Nigel Grindle is the next member up with a question, saying, if a takeover goes through, Parcel Force will become another gig economy owner, drivers, low pay, no holiday, etc. I'm sure of this. I mean, you and the union, obviously, backed by the members, have won successive disputes off the back of making sure we don't go down that route. Is that something that you're looking at, with the takeover in the background, or with the behaviour of the current board, and seeing an increased risks of that?
Well, look, I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, it didn't take a takeover from Vesa or anybody else to bring this onto the table. Royal Mail Group in its current form were absolutely on this message, 18 months ago. That was the plan, was to move to a fully gig economy resourcing model. And look, if they want, and they constantly do try to make a rationale as to why that's required, then they only they'll look at the rest of the industry. And unfortunately, during the period of time, when the parcel industry per se has been on an expansion, huge expansion, almost every other service provider runs a gig economy model of some form. DPD are probably just about 100% owner-driver, i.e., in DPD and liveried vans. Some of the others, and DPD are Parcel Force's main direct competitor. Some of the others that are more in Royal Mail's sort of wheelhouse, Every, Yodel, whoever else, I mean, they use lifestyle couriers. They ain't even owner drivers for the most part. It's people delivering out their own car. So that's the sad truth of the industry. But listen, we are absolutely, I mean, I've been in and around Parcel Force all of my time in Royal Mail, 35 years. It would be this year if I was still a Royal Mail employee or a Parcel Force employee. We're never going to support a move from the owner-driver model. There was the mixed resourcing agreement from back in the early 2000s that was the old 25-75. We still believe, as a backstop, that agreement is still in place. But the BRT&G said anything we do just now, if there's any reduction, it should reduce the external resource, including owner drivers. So look, we would oppose that under any circumstances. But the best way to oppose it is to disprove the model. And that's where things like the rurals, things like the single large parcel network, because this is not just about keeping owner drivers out at Parcel Force. We know what, if they were to move that way in Parcel Force, it's not going to be far behind in Royal Mail. So we are absolutely resolute that that's not the right model for the company. It's not the right model for Parcel Force or for Royal Mail. It's certainly not the right model for our members. All the points that were in the comment there about holidays, sick pay, uniform, pension, all of that goes with the owner driver model. So it's absolutely key that we do that. And that's why things like the alternative reward mechanism are important, because finding a way to prove to the company or to convince the company that that's not the best way to go, we can only do that in the long term if we can actually start to bridge that cost gap. Because while we can moan and wail about it's all unfair, it's and it's gig economy and it's this or that, a company that's looking at the bottom line will always come back and say, yeah, but it's cheaper. So getting and I noticed in the comments there was the old Parcel Force or management, they always love a metric, don't they? And currently it is stops per route. Used to be BSI, it was various things before that. And we can laugh about it and we can say it's a nonsense measure, and it is a nonsense measure. But the truth is, the perceived truth is from Parcel Force is the owner drivers deliver more items than our members because they're motivated to do it. So things like the alternative reward mechanism are around finding ways of not guaranteed wages, but motivating people with a wee bit on top if we can get it to work correctly. And that's again part of the business transformation agenda, things that we're looking at, not just in Parcel Force but in Royal Mail as well. But Parcel Force kind of is the test bed. And I know Parcel Force members say, well, why is it us? Why could we not do it in Royal Mail? Because the truth is, we are the best parcel delivery network at this point, and the best place to test innovation, because effectively, we are, and Parcel Force, our Parcel Force members have been delivering parcels as their sole job, for their whole career. So it's difficult as well. Nobody likes to go first. It is the best test bed to test some of these concepts and get us to a position where we can get Parcel Force back in the position where it's making money, where it can invest in new vehicles, new buildings, it can expand the network, it can grow the volume and secure all of our jobs now and into the future.
Spot on. And in terms of, I've talked a bit there about, avoiding that type of model. In terms of the current model, I think we've got Wayne Stoker, who was asking what had happened to the 25% owner-driver rule. That seems to have been forgotten. Is this the case? What would your take be on that? And I guess advice to our reps who are in workplaces like dealing with that locally.
I think I think I said it earlier. In our view, there was the famous Simon Thompson letter, wasn't there? I think it was the 22nd of September 22, when he wrote to Dave, serving notice on the legal undertakings, I think they called them, which was what we used to call the legally binding contract. So when he sent that letter, the then managing director at Parcel Force, Aaron Barnes, then wrote to me and said the 25% limit no longer applies. We're just going to recruit owner drivers. Now, my response to him then was, well, no, go and read Simon's letter, because that's not what it said. What it said is you were removing the legal protection, But he also said in the same letter, all other elements of the agenda for growth remain. And the agenda for growth was quite clear that actually the national agreements right across Royal Mail Group, where while the legal protection might have gone, the agenda for growth committed Royal Mail Group management to all of the previous national agreements. So my view might have been, I can't take you to court anymore, but the 25% limit is still there. Now actually, when we made the BRT&G agreement, it became something of a moot point, because as I said earlier, in a couple of places in the BRT&G, in section 3, which was around job security, Royal Mail Group, and also in appendix 3, not to confuse the issues, which was the Parcel Force appendix, it quite clearly said all headcount reduction will be from external resource. It also put a freeze on, and this is pertinent now, it also put a freeze on owner-driver recruitment for the period of what was called the strategic review. And you may remember, Chris, you may know, actually the strategic review in the Parcel Force section was due to finish by the end of June last year. We didn't, if you remember, we didn't ratify the agreement till the middle of July. So it dragged on. But Rob Fowler has now written to me on the 5th of April saying that they've, which is good and bad, so that the strategic review is now over. Now that could have opened up a raft of difficult issues for us. They could have said, well, we are now going back on to Plan A or the old agenda. They haven't, and we've agreed a new programme of work. What it has done, though, as far as they're concerned, is end the freeze on owner-driver recruitment. And that's led to an exchange of correspondence between myself and Rob, and I'm waiting on his response. But my position would be the 25% is still there. Actually, we still shouldn't be recruiting owner-drivers. We should be looking to recruit, where we can, internal drivers, or converting because we have, in Parcel Force, because of the way they operate, we have quite a number of people who've been working agency for a long time and are members of the union, so we've asked for them to be converted. So his letter to me of the 5th didn't mention recruiting owner drivers, but he has mentioned it now in respect to two specific depots, which is Glasgow and Edinburgh, where the owner driver level is way below the 25%. So my view is there's other options he could take to recruit there, along with other work that we're jointly doing. So we're in dialogue again, but to be clear, our view would still be the 25% agreement, or the mixed resourcing quotas still apply. To be specific, that was 25% of C&D routes only, so it's not 25% of Parcel Force employees or 25% of all driving routes. It doesn't include bulks or collection routes. It's 25% of C&D routes, and that could be varied to, and the original agreement said it could be varied to 35% only by agreement in a specific depot, as long as the national 25% wasn't breached. And we know we do have some depots, even before the BRT&G, there were 2 or 3 depots, maybe even more than that, 4 or 5, that were above the 25%. That may have come down, it should have come down where we've been deploying the rurals or various other things. But our position is still resolutely, our commitment to all of the programme of work, both at BRTG and again going forward now, is still based on us jointly working towards a model that moves away from the owner-driver model. So, as I say, Rob appears to understand that. He understands. He asked me to put my position in writing, which I've done, and I await a response from him. So I don't think they're going to move back to wholesale recruitment of it. But if you do in your depot, if you're a Parcel Force rep, and they do say to you, we're going to recruit owner drivers again, you should be challenging it on the basis of both the BRTG and the mixed resourcing agreement.
Thank you, Davie. Final question from the members is Darren Robertson, who I'm sure you can see the question on screen there. If you're not busy enough, have you started negotiations for next year's pay deal? I think there was quite a few comments asking this. I think coming from a real genuine, obviously a need and obviously a want for a pay rise, but also wanting us to not sort of stumble into another dispute or a late set of negotiations, if you like,
Yeah, I mean, the direct answer to the question is no, but that doesn't mean we haven't started planning for it. And we have raised next year's pay with both parts of the business, with the whole of Royal Mail Group. Because let's not forget, I mean, last year it was very late in the day before Royal Mail Group even agreed to flow the pay rise through to Parcel Force. I mean, our Parcel Force members may remember for long parts of the dispute, Parcel Force were being offered nothing or less than, and I'm sure a lot of people have got a view on the pay rise in the BRT and G, and I'm sure people had aspirations for more. But for long parts of that process, Parcel Force weren't offering even as much as Royal Mail did. So we had to push them hard to get Parcel Force back into the same place. We are very keen to not find ourselves in the same position again. And certainly for them, it was at conference. You'll know there was an emergency motion put by the Postal Executive and moved by the DGSP, moved by Martin, around preparations for next year's pay talks and ensuring that there's consultation with branches and with members ahead of that, so that people do feel that they've been consulted, do feel that they've had their say. There's the perennial debate around, we're owed time and shorter working week, but if I'm out and about, some people would say I'd rather have the money. Some people would say, well, I'm owed the hours, I want them, So we're absolutely committed to consulting both in Royal Mail and Parcel Force on the next pay round. I suppose the task, and it comes back to everything we've been talking about today, the task for in Royal Mail and Parcel Force, Royal Mail published their half-year accounts and had a £319 million loss. I think it's next week or a couple of weeks from now they'll publish their full year ones. Hopefully they're not worse, a lot worse than that, but I don't think they're going to be a lot better. Even if they broke even in the second half of the year, it's still going to be a significant loss for the year. Parcel Force is, as I said earlier, have contributed to that loss. So the key is to get to a position where we're starting to make headway. And we're in a position where we're, especially in Parcel Force, growing volume against key, maintaining quality of service, and I've got to pay testament to our reps and members just now, because we are improving quality of service in Parcel Force, and that's absolutely crucial, because that's what will bring the major posting customers, that's what brings them back, is getting up to that 97.5%, 98% guarantee first time delivery. That's we are doing it, and our members are delivering that. So that's key. We want to be in as good a position as we are going into the next pay round. Next pay round remains April next year. We will want to be in negotiations. I know we say this every time. I would like people to get their pay rise on the 1st of April, because we've got an agreement bottomed out before that. That will certainly be the aspiration. I would certainly think we would want to be in serious discussions this year, not leaving it into 25. And we are certainly, as the conference motion committed us to, we are absolutely preparing for that next round of talks, not just on what we want, but to ensure that our members feel that they've been part of that process and they've had their say.
Spot on, Davie. I want to say, obviously, thanks to yourself. Loads of information there. Give you the opportunity before we do close up, to get across any final messages to our members in Parcel Force who are watching.
Yeah, and I thank you for the opportunity, Chris, and I'm very impressed with your new palatial surroundings. So, look, Parcel Force, it's difficult, and we do understand. There can be frustrations. There is when a lot of the talks about the USO and what's going to happen to the USO, which doesn't, cover Parcel Force, what's going to happen with VESA, which absolutely does affect Parcel Force as well. It's easy to feel that you are there's not a lot of info coming out. I'm happy to do these whenever you like. But I think the message for our Parcel Force members is, look, we never stop fighting for you. We never stop trying to improve your lot. It's a difficult road. The days when, if there ever were days where I think sometimes members harken back to times that maybe didn't exist, where we just told the company what we wanted and they gave in. That's certainly, I don't think it ever was the case, but it's certainly not the case just now. Everything's, we have to battle for, but it's worth fighting for. Parcel Force is a good business. Our members in Parcel Force are experts at what they do. If we can get to a scenario where we can allow them to do what they know that they can do, then we will start to make real progress. So we are constantly fighting for you. We're constantly trying to improve your lot. I will give you some good information, hopefully that does cheer you up if you're watching. It has now been confirmed that Rex is now in its end days, and the company is going to replace Rex with a new vehicle routing system, which is easy to say. They tell us it's what DPD use, so they're pretty sure it's as state of the art as they can get, and that should start to happen this year. So some of the miseries that Rex has brought upon us, we should have a new system that will make things easier. But look, Parcel Force is worth fighting for. Some of that means change. I'm never going to be shy, and I'm never going to step away from suggesting that, or trying things new or embarking on change where we think it's right. But it's only right if we can bring you with us. So the key is sessions like this. The key is, and we are trying to get out in round depots as well, is to get out, get talking to you, make sure that you understand. We don't do it for the fun of it, and we don't ask you to change, for some sort of nebulous idea. We do it because we are committed to securing the future of Parcel Force. And I always will be. I've been around Parcel Force all my time in the business. It's not the only thing within my current remit, but it's important to me, and we'll continue to fight long and hard to make sure that Parcel Force does have a secure future as part of a single large parcel network, as part of Royal Mail, not separated out, not the Gary Simpson plan of creating a new company. We will continue to fight for that, and with your support, I remain confident that we can make sure that the trajectory of the business is in the right way, and that we can secure the future for everybody.
Thank you, Dave. We really appreciate it, mate. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. We're going to see you next Wednesday for a live session, 6 o'clock on the Royal Mail USO and the Takeover bid. But for now, stick with your union.